Hey there, that's Stephen Hughes here yet again on the YouTube channel. I'm hoping that today we're going to have I think, pretty unique conversation where it's not going to just be basic because we've had a couple of things about placement services on the YouTube channel. But my guest today, as you guys know, is going to introduce themselves and their business. And I think we'll actually have a bit of a beefier conversation today. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Awesome. So my name's Amelia Larson. My company is A Life for Seniors. We are a Utah-based company that helps people find assisted living and memory care. It's a no-cost resource. We work with different assisted livings and help people find the right fit based off of their needs, budgets, and preferences.
Yeah, so I mean, are you saying you work with Social Security or Medicare? Now that's a little bit of a funny question, but what does that mean?
Yeah, no. So typically, the people that we work with are people that either are looking for communities for themselves or for a loved one that are just no longer safe at their home anymore or are just no longer interested in doing kind of the day to day things that happen at home. We typically work with people that have different ranges of care that they need, from independent living, where they're just looking to kind of have more of like a social environment that they want to live in, all the way down to skilled nursing and memory care. Assisted living is kind of the nice hybrid place for people to live, where you can go there and get assistance with things like medication reminders, showers, dressing, things like that. But you can also live there completely independently and just have a place to age in place. And then, memory care is for more progressive forms of dementia. So when you kind of have someone that maybe is more of an exit seeker or a wander risk and is more than just forgetful, but is actually kind of endangering themselves and not really able to recognize those safety differences anymore. So we work with families and try to understand what they need and then help connect them to the right buildings and facilitate different resources to kind of help with that transition. So Medicare, unfortunately, does not pay for assisted living. It is typically a private pay system. Sometimes people have long term care insurance, and that will help cover the cost of things, but traditional insurance, unfortunately, does not pay for assisted living. I wish it did.
There's just a tremendous lack of understanding in terms of this avenue of life. Meaning, there's so many people that think, oh, if I pay in Social Security or I pay taxes, I'm just going to get this paid for. It is common, or they want to do stuff that's, well, shady and wrong, such as, like we were talking about, getting divorced so one spouse can get on Medicaid, which is fraud. We've talked about it on this channel before, and we'll probably, I'd love for you to revisit some of those things, such as new choice waiver,
Yep.
VA and attendance. But the biggest way people pay for a lot of these communities is through the liquidation of assets or through income or their kids or grandkids helping to supplement the monthly expenditures.
A lot of times we get calls from families, and when we ask them what their budget is, they have that same assumption that, Medicaid will pay for it, insurance will pay for it, and we have to do a little bit of education. So insurance types and or Medicaid, those typically will fund some stays in like a long-term care setting, like a skilled nursing or a nursing home, right? Let's say you broke a hip, and you need to go there for short-term rehab to get recovered. Insurance usually will kick in and help pay for, anywhere up to 120 days, depending on progress. However, traditional Medicaid does not afford assisted living. There is a program that you had mentioned called the New Choice Waiver, and that program does kick in to help with the cost of assisted living. However, you have to go a couple of different ways to qualify for it. So the two different ways that you can either go private pay in assisted living for a minimum of a year and spend down your assets. You usually, as an individual, have to get below $2,000 of assets, and then you have to be on Medicaid already at this time, and then you can apply for it. The way that they kind of look at it is then they'll look at your monthly income and figure out a ratio that you need to contribute to keep spending, towards the assisted living. This isn't always the best plan because not every assisted living accepts the new choice waiver, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
there's a lot of planning that has to go into it. The other way you can qualify for the new choice waiver is you have gone to skilled nursing for 90 days and have spent down your assets there. The hard part for that is, we get a lot of calls for people that they might be unsteady or things like that, but they don't qualify for what's called the 10A criteria that allows you to go to a skilled nursing to be there for 90 days. And so it's kind of this like double-edged sword of you really need to sit down and like come up with a plan before you need to have a plan, so that when you do need these resources, we know how to kind of access different things. There is an asset limit that does have, like, I believe it's a 5-year look back period. And so, a lot of people are like, well, we'll just go gift the house to the kids and, that will allow them to go qualify for this. And, that's just not how it works. And so that's again where like the planning part comes in, that we really should all be working together, whether that's like from the real estate side, like yourself, and then with us to really figure out like, what is our plan, right? Because unfortunately, like with aging, as annoying as it is, you have to have some skin in the game. And so, like, if you own a house and you're married and you have, you and your spouse needs more help, unfortunately, you can't really like have your spouse get on Medicaid and then you stay in the house. That's just not how it works. A lot of people think, that is how it works, but that's just not the case. Other different forms of funding for assisted living would be like aid in attendance, which is a veterans program. You have to have been an active military member during at least one day of an active period of war in order to qualify for that. But you also have to be able to show that you need the income, right? So let's say we have an assisted living we think you're going to go to. Part of the application process is to show the cost of what the monthly rent will be so that it can justify, why you need the money from the VA. It's kind of a little bit of a different process. There is an asset limit. You have to be under $220,000 in your bank account. And so again, that's like another part of the planning process. If you have a house to sell, it's important that, everyone communicates and works together to make sure that things are set up correctly so that you can qualify for this benefit, or make sure, different assets are protected, or even make sure that you can qualify. The other thing with aid in attendance is it's not like an overnight program that you can get onto. It typically can take anywhere from like 3 to 5 months to even get approved for the program. So what we like to do is we have some resources that we work with, that we like to connect families with, to make sure that you can A, even qualify for the program. And then, B, they can help you do the application if you want them to, or you can do it yourself. The way that it kind of works is while you're waiting to get approved, sometimes people need that money in order to afford assisted living. So at those points, we like to look at, bridge loans or some family assistance that can help, because once you get on the program, it'll reimburse you for the amount of time it took. So if it took 3 months to get approved, you'll get reimbursed for 3 months and then get that, monthly rate going forward. But again, just kind of all comes down to planning. And then the last kind of form of funding for it would be a long-term care insurance policy, which a lot of people don't tend to have because it is a pricier policy to have. But those are kind of like the 3 main ways to help get into assisted living, outside of just traditional funds of, selling your house or having retirement accounts set up to help cover the cost and things like that.
What strikes me in what you were talking about, and I nodded with you and was agreeing, is the new choice waiver, especially in Utah. A lot of your competitors will lead with the new choice waiver, but I don't think it's a super realistic option for a majority of people. And
Yeah.
it's because the funds are limited and a lot of communities will not accept it. And the reason they won't accept it is because they really, let's just speak business wise, they don't get to make as much money off the resident because
Mhm.
it is a business that they're running. But also, statistically, typically people who are on the new choice waiver tend to be residents that require much more care, which means
Yes.
they're more expensive. So they're getting less money, but they're having to spend more money on them.
Yeah.
So that there's a big divide, and there's sometimes I would say character conflicts within that, statistically speaking. Obviously, not everybody. You don't want to generalize, but I have not heard. I think you're kind of the first person to lead with that. It appears you created this business from the ground up in terms of placements. You did not go and buy a franchise out of California or Texas or somewhere else,
Yeah.
Midwest. I've seen them in different places and think, oh, well, here's the big silver tsunami. There's all these people who are going to age in the next 10 years, pass away, and here's my ticket to the big time. I'll say this out loud to the channel. There was a period of time in my career where I had a big disdain for placement agencies,
Yes.
and I was very vocal about it. But it only has been in the past, I would say, not even a full year that I had a good relationship with one company, and I've done some stuff up north here because you're further south than me here in the state. And now I said, maybe it's time to actually reach out to the people who've been doing it longer. And I found a couple other good people. And like my business is expanding down to Utah County, like we talked about. So I want to point out that you didn't just go and buy some franchise, that obviously you have a background with
Mhm.
working with seniors and you are a local business and entrepreneur. And I would love if you could elaborate on a little bit of your journey and what you think makes your business different compared to people who just drop $50,000 for a franchise placement company. I'll put it that bluntly.
Yeah.
I don't mind.
No, happy to. So I started the company 6 years ago. I kind of grew up in this space. My grandpa was paralyzed growing up in Logan. And so spent a lot of time in and out of nursing homes and home health and things like that. And was going to school for speech therapy when my grandma had a stroke and my uncle had cancer. And so got to really dive into the skilled nursing side, see what it was about, and decided that's kind of the route that I wanted to go. So did my undergrad in healthcare administration and then did my master's in gerontology. Started off in the skilled nursing space and realized there just wasn't as much change as I had hoped to be able to make. So I transitioned over to the assisted living side and kind of did every position from activities director to marketing to running the buildings. And I ran the buildings for a couple of years. And it was getting frustrating to me because we would accept leads from other placement companies, right? And it was kind of disheartening because we would have families come in that weren't being educated on like what to look for, what to ask. They were just kind of like being blindly given our name, or we would be given their phone number and be asked to call, and the families like had no idea that they were even like being represented by a company. And so that was kind of, really annoying. And when my mom was going through this with her mom, she, got stress induced vertigo. Just the whole process was overwhelming. So, with a little bit of a combination of getting sick with the corporate game of everything and then being frustrated, with families telling us like, why are you telling us things that you're building that other buildings aren't telling us? My answer always to them was like, I'm not selling you a car. I want to have some like realistic conversations. If your mom needs a lot of help, we need to be having different conversations than like, do we have a full size fridge, right? We need to be looking at like care staffing ratios and like things that actually pertain to care and making sure that they're taken care of. And so I decided to go start this company. A couple of things that we really bring to the table that not everyone else can say that they can is one, we've lived in the industry, we've worked in the industry, we've run the buildings. We know what good care looks like, right? We know what questions to ask. We can keep a pulse. We know the regulations. I think that's a really big difference for us. We didn't just, decide that we're no longer going to be working at CVS and we're going to go buy a franchise and now we're going to tell people where to live. We really can hone in on kind of crafting the experience for people. I think since we've been around for a long time too, we do have a lot of contracts. We are contracted with the majority of the assisted livings throughout the entire state. I started it in Salt Lake, but now we cover everywhere from Logan down to St. George, and we're actually in Texas. We just opened Texas in January. We have a lady out there who does some stuff for us who's amazing also. But, I've tried to really craft our team to have people that are here for the right reasons and that are experienced in the industry, not just people looking for jobs. Other things that kind of set us apart is we really want to provide that personalized recommendation. We don't just take your name and send it to everyone and then ask the buildings to call. Like, we really understand what your budget is, your needs, your preferences, like what you're hoping for. And then we'll connect you with the right buildings dependent on that. I've had families in the past where they've been like, oh, we're going to move mom to the building across the street. Like it's, right there. And then I'll talk to them and I'll get to know them. Like I remember this one family specifically, their dad, they thought that they were always going to move him to one community. And I started to get to know more about him and they would explain kind of what his day-to-day looked like. And they're like, he just wants to hang out in his recliner, eat Oreos, and watch TV. And my conversation to them was, so why did we go look at this place that's like $6,000 a month, right? That has 200 activities going on and all these social programs that he's never going to go participate in. Like, let's look at a building that is smaller, has bigger rooms, has a smaller community feel so he can feel comfortable in it, right? And that wasn't ever something that even crossed their mind because they thought the place that they constantly drove by would be the best option. And so it's those little things to help educate people on what that looks like. Or I don't even know how many veterans we've helped that didn't even know aid in attendance existed. I remember one lady, she was moving her mom here from Chicago and she called me in tears and she was like, I don't even know why I'm calling you. I've talked to 4 placement companies. We can't afford $6,000 a month for memory care. I'm going to have to quit my job. And I was like, there are definitely options out there that are not $6,000 a month. Like, let me get you in contact with those people. And she was so relieved and she was so annoyed that no one else had taken the time to give her the right resources. And I think, that's like the $1,000,000 question of us, like, how do we get paid? Right. So we get paid by assisted livings when people move in. Because of that, if you work with the wrong company, a lot of them are going to be financially incentivized as to where to send you versus sending you places based off of what you actually need, right? And so that is like our huge belief is like we believe in ethics, we believe in doing the right thing, we believe in communication. I always say the best thing that we have going for us is our reputation, right? That's like the only thing we can control. So we always want to make sure we're doing it for the right reasons. And that's what really came into play with this family is, no one else had given her the resources that she was looking for because, financially, they would rather her move into a more expensive community. For us, we're like, we just want you to have the right place that you can afford so you can get back to your life and have that relief. I think that we really go above and beyond with our people. So it's been a cool thing to get to watch grow.
I think that's an excellent answer. I mean, honestly, we've covered a lot of the services you provide, what those services are, and even the story of the business. It's the only thing I think I would ask before we wrap up
Yeah.
is if you had anything else you wanted to share for the general public, because that's part of the reason for these videos is to educate the general public,
Yeah.
just about anything in the industry or about you or your business.
No, 100%. I think the biggest message I would want to leave people with is as great of an idea as it is that like this will never happen to you, right? I mean, we hear that all the time. Like, I'm never going to go to assisted living. I'm never going to need that. My daughter's going to take care of me, right? It's super important to at least have the conversation. Whether or not you think it's going to happen to you, most people that we work with also thought it wasn't going to happen to them. And so I always say it's better to have a plan in place and hope you never need it than to not have a plan in place. And now we are like frantically panicking, trying to find a spot within the right budget, and there isn't an option. And I think that's where like you and I can work really closely together. If you're starting to consider the idea, like let's have the conversation. Let's see, how much the house is worth for sale. Let's see what all those different pieces look like so that then we can start looking at ideas and you can know what options you did have. So if something happened, you had a say in the decision, right? Or now, especially coming from like the kids side, right? I think there's a lot of guilt with like you feel like you weren't able to provide the care, you gave up on your parents and that's why you're moving them, when in reality it comes from like a place of love because you want them to be safe. And so I think, we really provide like a community with resources to help with those hard conversations, to help understand, can you afford it? How could you? How do things need to be structured? Again, we're a complimentary resource. So we're always open to having a conversation and at least connecting you to the right people if we're not the right person. Right. So I think it's just all about building the community.
I totally agree. And although this is a little bit of a tangent, you're talking about planning for the future. None of us likes to look at the potential of the inevitable mortality we all face, but even just the potential of the bad health and things, but statistics and everything, and just people that there's a big chance of that. For example, my wife and I are in the middle of updating like our trust and will, and it's because we want to make sure if we unfortunately both passed away, some stuff is set up for our daughter. Now, the likelihood of that happening, super
Yeah.
small,
But
but
you're
I'd rather
prepared.
set up than but in what we're talking about is the idea of your mother or father who's in their 80s or 90s needing help because they can't take care of themselves in a 4,000 square foot home, significantly higher. And avoiding that hard conversation is not helping them.
No.
I mean, waiting for the last minute really can cause big problems. I am always open for a free consultation. I'm sure you take calls and are happy to talk to people too.
All the time. Yeah. No, if anything,
If you
it's
could tell,
education.
yeah, if you could tell us how best to find you online and your phone number and such, just say that out loud because we'll get it in the transcript. Of course, Amelia's information is going to be in the description box below. But if you could share that with us, it'd be great before we
Yeah.
let you go.
No. So our website is just alifeforseniors.com. So you can find us on there, contact us. My email is just amelia@alifeforseniors.com. And our main line is 801-656-4996. But yeah, you can reach out however you most feel comfortable.
Great. I really appreciate it. Well, thanks so much, folks, for watching today. Of course, like, share, and subscribe. If you do enjoy this content, share it with a friend. It does help us to just continue to educate people. Of course, if you want to reach out to Amelia, I've heard information was just shared, and it'll be in the description box as well. Anyways, thanks so much for coming on the podcast and YouTube channel. We'll talk to you later. Have a good day.
Thanks.